And hello, everybody. Good Saturday night to all of you. This is a special college football preview show with me, Randall Bealey, and my good friend, Cody Montanaro.
Hello, y'all.
Alrighty. So, what we're going to do, and we'll explain this real quick, is over the next couple of weeks leading up to the start of the college football season, we will go over the Power Five conferences and make a prediction. So with that said, I I looked at the Power Five and I ranked the conferences from most competitive and then from 1 to 5. And so we're starting with the Pac-12 today because honestly, one, I don't necessarily care about them. Two, they're not super competitive, not really. They got two or three teams I think we can consider championship contenders, but other than that, eh. So, I just gave my general statement, so I'll allow Cody give your general statement of how you feel about the Pac-12.
Yeah, man, I think that the Pac-12, it's got, like you said, maybe a few teams. I think really only two teams that could be championship or at least college football playoff material. But overall, this is a um, bleak conference. There are some good teams, but I think maybe one elite team, if that. Um, and as you'll see with our prediction show, I think what we'll do is we'll keep a tally of teams we think will be in the college football playoff. We'll do four. We'll not do, we think they could be, but we'll give our prediction of what we think, conference champions and stuff like that, and championship games, and if they're bowl teams are bowl eligible, I think, and then who we think may be those final four at the end of the season, go into the two different bowl games, and then ending up possibly the national championship in January. So, yeah, the Pac-12, I think I agree with you, it is probably the weakest conference of the five, the Power Five. So, but they do have some interesting teams for sure to talk about.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is, I don't know necessarily how you have your teams ordered, but I did it by division. I don't remember the two division names, but
Just got
we're
the North and the South.
the North and the South. That's what I figured. So we'll start with, I think it's the North Division. That's the division with Cal and the Golden Bears. That's the
Yes.
North, right? So we'll start with the North first, and we'll start with Cal. Um, Honestly, I don't think they're bad. I think they're a mediocre team in terms of if you take the whole NCAA. Though I do feel their schedule is really hard. In that the most again they play 9 conference games. I think if I remember, yeah, they play 9 conference games. So 9 out of the 12 games they get conference games, and Cal has the first 3 weeks non-conference, and 2 of them with North Carolina and BYU to start the season are super challenging to me looking at Cal, and so I'll let you give your general overview of the team, then we'll go in and I don't know if you made score predictions. I didn't because I don't like predicting scores.
I'm not.
Um,
I'm okay with that. I do. If I'm doing it on the week of a game, I'll do that,
yeah,
but
yeah,
not this early in the season. I just
yeah.
gave win losses for each and every game they're doing, and some notes on the team, and then my overall record for the team.
Righty. So, go ahead and give your general overview what you feel on the team, and we'll go ahead and go through the schedule.
So, just going through some notes here that I kind of compiled and looked over this roster and looked over this team. Um, California is in a transition period. Um, last season they weren't god awful. If you look at the record, it doesn't look the greatest. They lost 4 games by 10 points or less in 2017. So you could have easily flipped those 4, maybe 3 as wins. We could be looking at them as a different story this year. The offense this year does return 10 starters. They have a 1,000-yard rusher in Patrick Laird. He's, I think, probably going to get back to that 1,000-yard rushing game too, with some of the weak defenses that the Pac-12 has, and some of the opponents that California faces. I think he could easily, as long as he doesn't get hurt, doesn't have any injuries, I think he can have another 1,000-yard season for sure. Get a very good deep receiving core on offense, led by Demetrius Robertson. He's returning from injury, so that's going to be a big help for that receiving core. Hopefully they can spread the ball around and spread the wealth and maybe take a little bit of pressure off of Patrick Laird, even though he's going to add a good dimension to that offense. Offensively, it's a very good team. Defense, they allowed less yards and points than they did the previous year before. So they should be better this year. Pointing as a sign that the trends are going up for Cal. The trend should be that the defense should be better this year. They're returning all four of their starting cornerbacks. So that secondary will be very experienced. It's going to be a big help for them. So that way, maybe if they aren't very good rushing, pass attack should be pretty good for them as well. This team could play spoiler in the North. My record will indicate that they won't, but it would not surprise me if Cal played spoiler with some of the home games they have. They've got Oregon at home, they've got Washington, and they got Stanford at home. So this team could definitely play a spoiler in the Pac-12 North Division. Maybe give some of these teams that we think could dominate maybe a little bit of fits. Maybe create a little bit of interest as to who may ultimately take home the Pac-12 North. But ultimately, I don't have California winning the Pac-12 North, but having a very respectable record for sure this year.
All right, let's go through the schedule. So September 1st, which is their first game, at home they play the North Carolina Tar Heels. I gave them the W. The Tar Heels are not the same. When we go through the ACC, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about the Tar Heels. But the Tar Heels are definitely not the same Tar Heels we saw. Was it 3 years ago now when they played?
Yeah.
When they played against Clemson in the ACC championship game. So I think Cal can, start the season at home against a really soft UNC team, and I think they start the season with a W.
Definitely, I agree with that. I think that UNC traveling all the way to the West Coast is going to have fits against California, and I think that, like I said, that offense is going to start showing off, and they start off that season with the W.
Alrighty, so the next week they travel out to Brigham Young out there in the state of Utah. I gave BYU the win here, so Cal gets the loss. BYU is always they're one of those teams, and we'll see this continuously. They play a lot of the Pac-12 teams this year, and so I think with BYU being independent, they could definitely shake up the Pac-12 though, and so I think with the loss for week 2 to BYU.
As we saw, was it last year where BYU had those two Hail Mary game-winning?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
It was either in the last year or two. I know they did one against Nebraska, and I don't remember who the other one was against. Maybe just against Utah State or something like that. I don't remember. Boise State or something like that. BYU is one of those teams that could give the Pac-12 fits because I do see that they do play a few teams in the Pac-12. However, I do think California does not let BYU take advantage of that, and they go into Brigham Young and take the victory. So they start off the season 2-0.
Alrighty, so now we go back home to Berkeley. You get Idaho State, which to me, this has to be an easy win. You can't lose to this caliber of a team at home. So, 3 weeks in my record, you're 2-1. Not a bad start to the season. How do you see it?
Kind of going 3-0, starting off very well, heading into conference play in week 4. They'll have a bye week in week 4, but heading to conference play, Cal will have a 3-0 record on my score sheet here.
All right, so like we said, week 4 of the season is their bye week. So week 5, September 29th, we have Cal at home again playing the Oregon Ducks in a game which on paper, Oregon could win, but you take the factors of a win at Idaho State. You get a bye week. You're at home. I think Cal gets the win here, moves them to 3-1.
I think that Oregon is another one of those surprise teams in the Pac-12. We'll get to them in a little bit, but I do think that Oregon does come into Cal and to Berkeley and actually takes the W. So that's where my first loss for California happens, and they will be 3-1 after 4 games.
Alrighty. So now we are at October 6th at Arizona. I think this is another loss for Cal. Arizona gets the win, moves them to 3-2.
Yeah, I think going on the road in Arizona, Cal 3-1 in mine takes the suffered of the L here and falls to 3-2 at Arizona.
All right, so then they go back home October 13th, UCLA. I think it's another loss. It's going to be a really close game, in my opinion, but I think UCLA pulls this one off.
Don't think it'll be that close, in my opinion. Or excuse me, I do think it will be that close, excuse me. But I don't think UCLA will come out on top. I do think California takes the reins here and wins against UCLA. Cal does, and then moves the record to 4-2. Yeah, I believe 4-2. Yeah.
All right. So now we get to October the 20th at Oregon State. I think they head up to Oregon State and
Jesus, got all things wrong with my bad. Trying to find a pen here. I messed up my schedule here a little bit.
So they go to Oregon State. I think they get the W. That moves their record to 4-3.
Oregon State is just not going to be very competitive in the Pac-12. Hate to say it, they just won the College Baseball World Series, so you guys can stay high on that over there in Oregon State. But Cal does take the victory here, and that does move them to 5-2, I believe, on my resume.
Alrighty, so we're now at the schedule makers right here in terms of putting the conference schedule did not favor the end of the year for Cal here.
No, he didn't.
So the next 4 games are Washington, Washington State, Southern Cal, and Stanford before we get to last week, which is Colorado. So Washington at home. Washington's just dominant. They're one of the 2 or 3 teams we can call a playoff Final Four caliber team. Washington comes in, I think, steamrolls California. So what do you think?
Definitely. I think that two comments. One, I'm pretty sure that most viewers at home don't want to see the top of your cranium. Not sure if you're doing something. Just had to point that out. Yeah, I don't think California stands much of a chance against Washington. That is one of those elite teams we're talking about. Cal takes the L there, moves them to 5-3.
All right. November 3rd at Washington State. I think this is another loss. Washington State's a really good team that a lot of people don't see as a good team, but hey, Luke Falk came from them. And then they've done real well. Their coach, I forgot his name, but he's a really good coach. Really turned that program around. So, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, I think this is also another L for California here, and moves their record to 5-4 on the season.
All right, November 10th at Southern Cal. I don't know why we're even trying to predict it. Southern Cal, they have on and off season, and I think this is going to be a pretty decent year for them. Again, we'll look at their schedule here in a little bit. I think it's another loss for Washington. Or not Washington, Cal. What the hell? Right?
It's just because we have Washington teams back-to-back weeks for them. Yeah, I do think this is another L. USC is like you said, we'll look at it in here just a little bit. I think they're going to have a good season under them. This will be the 3rd straight L I have for California, dropping their record to 500 at 5-5.
All right, so with 2 weeks left in their schedule, November the 17th, at home against Stanford. It would not shock me for a win, but I don't think it's going to happen. Stanford is just a well coached pro style team. A lot of pros come out of that team. And I think Stanford pulls off the win, and that makes 4 straight losses for Cal, moving my record to 4-5 or 4-7 or something like that.
I have Stanford coming into Berkeley and taking an L. I think that there's usually some surprises there, and I just feel like this is going to be one that's going to shock Stanford. Cal's coming off 3 straight losses, and they really don't want to have 4 straight, so I feel like they're going to be coming out throwing everything they got at Stanford, and I think they do come away with a W, moving their record to 6-5.
All righty. In the last week of the season, they play Colorado. I got them taking a win. It's at home. Great way to end it. And they end the season at 5-7.
Do have them getting a W at home as well. Got Cal going 7-5 this year. Very respectable season. Bowl eligible, of course. Not in the Pac-12 championship, but definitely a respectable record by far.
Absolutely. So now the team we move on to next is Oregon. So we'll give general comments again. I'll let you start with them.
Give me 1 second here. You're gonna get me a pen since I gonna make a little change here on my prediction real quick. I had the same record. I just it's a little bit wrong on my California score sheet here. Anyways, for Oregon, they got a new coach coming into Eugene. Coach Mario Cristobal. Respectable coach, I think, for sure. Good fit for them. I think it's going to help them kind of turn the page of what's been not a very good couple seasons here for Oregon. They have one of the great QBs in the Pac-12, and Justin Herbert. He brings back experience and is very good on that offense. They do have a favorable path schedule-wise to finish, have a great finish in the Pac-12 North, maybe be second, third in that division. But they don't play USC, which does play to their advantage in the schedule. We'll talk about in just a second. And they do get Stanford and Washington in Eugene, so that could help as a factor down the stretch when we do get to those two teams here. So overall, I think this is going to be an interesting Ducks team to look at with a new coach in mind. I do think we will see Oregon not back to prominence, but definitely turn the page and heading very up in the right direction this year.
All right, so let's get into the schedule here. For week 1, they play Bowling Green in Eugene. They get a really lucky schedule. First 4 weeks at home. Bowling Green at home, I give them the W.
If you don't give them the W, there's something going on here. Yeah, I do give Oregon the W there, starting off the season very well, 1-0.
All right. So then we go. They stay at home, and they play Portland State, which again another W.
I don't really know why I'm looking at my paper, but yes, that's a W there. 2-0 to start the season for sure.
All right. And then they go again at home, San Jose State, which part of me wants to get an upset, but I don't see it happening. 3-0 to start the season.
I do think that some points will be scored, but I do think Oregon's offense is pretty good and should take the W, start off the season 3-0.
All right. So now they get to Stanford. Still at home, and I think it could be a sports, more like battle royal style game, like the Stanford-Oregon games of old when Oregon was in prominence. But I see Stanford pulling this one off, make them 3-1.
Stanford's coming into Eugene, a very hostile territory. Oregon's 3-0 to start the season. As long as everybody stays relatively healthy and that offense is sparking, this could be a big trouble for Stanford. And I do see that on the schedule. It's a big trouble for Stanford. And I do have Oregon taking the W, making them 4-0 to start the season.
All right, and as predicted earlier, they go into Berkeley to play California and take the L again here, so that makes them 3-2.
Got them going into Berkeley, riding that high off of Stanford and carrying that momentum all the way through, and facing California with the W, 5-0 to start the season for Oregon.
All right, so then they at home again with Washington, and again, I'm giving them another L here. Moves them to 3-3 for the season.
I have this one. They're coming off of a bye. So Oregon, after facing California, goes on a bye, and they come home to face Washington. Get a little bit of rest, have a good crowd on hand. At this point, they're 5-0 in my season, so they would be a very raucous crowd, probably a game of the week type of situation there. Maybe game day heads over there to Oregon. But I do see this one being a very tight game, very close game. But I do have Washington coming away with a W. This puts the first blimp on the record for Oregon, moving them to 5-1 on my season.
All right, so then they go on the road. Had to play Washington State. I give them. I'm gonna give them the W here. I think they'll want to come back off a loss to Washington, and this is a great team to do it against. Washington State is not a perfect team. Is not no Washington or by no means. I think it'd be a perfect team for Oregon to prove that they're actually really good here in the Pac-12.
I would agree with that. I think they rebound off that loss against Washington. They travel up to Washington State and do take the W. That would make them 6-1 to start my season. Get that bowl eligibility out pretty quickly.
All right, so then they go again on the road again to Arizona, and we haven't really talked much about Arizona, but I don't think they're all that good. I think this is another L for Oregon, or a W for Oregon, excuse me.
While I think that Arizona isn't exactly the greatest team in the Pac-12, and we'll get into this in a little bit, I do think that there are a couple teams better in the North than there are in the South, but I do think the South does have a few good teams. Good, not great, but good. And Arizona is a good team. I do think that road schedule, back-to-back road games for Oregon, hurts them a little bit, and they do suffer a stunning loss to Arizona here, pushing them to 6-2.
All right, back at home against UCLA. I give a loss to Oregon.
Once again, they come back off of a loss. They bounce back pretty nicely, come home to Eugene, have a good crowd on hand, and take home the W. And that puts them to 7-2 on the season for me.
All right, then they go back on the road. They play Utah. I'm giving them another L, which moves them to 5-5, I think, right on my season.
This is going to be a tough environment for them. Utah is one of those really good teams in the Pac-12, have been for the past couple of seasons, and I think that does continue for them this year, and we'll get into them, of course, later. We say that about all these teams that we haven't mentioned. We'll get into them later, of course. But I do think they suffer a loss, so that puts them to 7-3 on the season for me.
All right, so then they go back home, back to Eugene. They face Arizona State. I'll give them another loss. That makes 3 straight losses, puts them at 5-6 or 6-5. I don't even know what they're at, to be honest. They're something. 5-6, I think, for the season for me.
I don't see this as being a trap game for Oregon. I think Arizona State does possess some good qualities on their team, but this is not a favorable matchup for Arizona State. Oregon takes this one at home, pushing their record to 8-3 on the season.
And the final game of the season, rivalry week on the road at Oregon State. It doesn't matter. You could play with 5 players on your team and still win this game. Oregon State is going to lose. Oregon gets the win, puts their final record to 6-6, makes them bowl eligible. How do you see this one?
This is definitely a win for Oregon. Take the rivalry game pretty good. 9-3, having finishing on the season, of course, bowl eligible, having a very good bowl game representing the Pac-12. A very good season for first-year coach for the Ducks, Marco Cristobal, on that team.
All right, so now we get to Oregon State. I think we've already said all we needed to do about opening comments for this team. Not much to talk about. Any notes you want to mention about this team?
Just they have a tough schedule, man. They have got a very, very harsh schedule for a team that's just not the greatest talent-wise in the Pac-12. They have a good, decent QB, Jake Luton. Let's see if he can have a good year. He's returning from a thoracic spine fracture after Game 4 last year, so he missed every game after the fourth one. See if he can return. He's a big kid, big, strong kid, and got some tallness. He's got a pretty good arm, so let's hope that he at least performs well. And the defense last year ranked 121st nationally in yards per game, 473 yards per game. That is the ninth to worst in FBS play. Not a good stat you want to look at, and I think the same will apply again this year. It's going to be a very long season in Oregon State, but it's okay because basically this will be the hangover for everybody that's being high up that College World Series win for the baseball team. So long season in Oregon State, but they did have a championship this season, so in a college athletic sport, so not too bad for them.
All right, so we're going to go through the schedule. Like you said, this is a really, really hard schedule. Right off the bat, they go on the road to Columbus, Ohio, face the Buckeyes, and if anyone predicts a win here, they're crazy. Ohio State with the victory.
I'm sure there's at least one person in Vegas that's got them having a win, and if they do, we'll go home one of the richest people in the world. However, I am a firm believer this will not happen. Oregon State does suffer their first defeat to Ohio State.
So which OSU wins? That's right, Ohio State.
Yeah, OSU will win no matter what.
Yes. Then they go back home to whatever city they play in. Either way, it's probably going to be raining. No, I'm joking. And they play Southern Utah, which I'm pretty sure is like a Division 5 school. No, I'm joking. I gave them the win. Would not be shocked if a loss happened, but 1-1 to start the year.
Yeah, I once again, somebody may have Southern Utah winning this and would become a very rich man if they win. But I do see this as a W for Oregon State. They do take the W here, move the record to 1-1 on the season.
All right. So now they go on the road again out to Nevada to play the Wolfpack, and it's a loss for Oregon State.
Yes, I was being conscientious with them. I think Oregon State does surprise a little bit of people, and they do take a road victory at Nevada and have a winning record, 2-1 start the season.
All right. So then they go back home, and they play Arizona, and I gave another loss to move their record to 1-3.
Loss to Arizona at home gives them to a 500 record, 2-2 on the season.
Then they go on the road to Arizona State. Sun Devils win, moves them to 1-4.
Fall under 500, 2-3, make that a loss at Arizona State.
All right, so back home at Washington State, or playing Washington State at home. Another loss, 1-5.
2-4. Washington State takes a win.
Go to Berkeley, or they at home to play Cal, which is again another loss, moves them to 1 and whatever.
Yeah, 2-5, I believe I have them here. Another loss to at home to Cal.
All right, so now they go on the road to Colorado. You gave them a road win against Nevada. I'm giving them a road win against Colorado, moving them to 2 and I think 4 or 2 and something. 2-6. Yeah, 2-6.
Yeah, I think this would be an intriguing matchup for Oregon State to see if they can maybe shock a little bit of people and get a road win there in conference play. I do not see this happening. I do see Colorado taking the W, pushing their record to 2-6. Oregon State.
All right. So again, the next 3 weeks are not fair at all, especially since 2 are on the road. At home, USC a loss 2-7.
2-6, or 2-7, excuse me. Yeah, USC. That's loss.
And then November 10th at Stanford. Can we not just play? This game is not going to be pretty at all. Moving them to 2-8.
2-8, but it's not this week. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. It's the week afterward, and the week after that one. The last 2 weeks of the season are going to be a bloodbath for sure for them. But a 2-8 against Stanford.
All right. So the week after, Stanford is on the road again to Washington. Again, a loss to 2-9.
Same here, 2-9.
And then Oregon, which will be a fun rivalry game. Oregon, like we already predicted, will get the win. Oregon State finishes the year 2-10.
Same here. This game will probably be over in the first quarter. So Oregon takes that 2-10 on the season for Oregon State. Of course, they do not get bowl eligible in our first. This is my first team that falls under 500 in the Pac-12.
All right, so now we move to Stanford. Of course, they got Bryce Love out there, which is the Heisman candidate. If all goes well, his draft stock will stay in the first round. Any other notes you want to mention about Stanford?
Yeah, defense is going to be a question mark. Excuse me. Defense is going to be a very big question mark for them after losing defensive linemen, Harrison Phillips, Justin Reed, the safety, and cornerback Quentin Meeks. All of them are gone to the NFL, or at least they're not coming back to college. They've already finished their credentials. Offense will definitely keep Stanford in the games this year, but that has my candidate, Bryce Love. They do have a pretty good O-line, which helps that offense, spark a little bit. So it'll be an interesting season in Stanford, but I do believe their defense could be the biggest problem, but could be a good season for them for sure.
All right. So they start the season August 31st, which is a good 40 days from now, which we're getting real close to football being back. San Diego State. Aztecs do not have a chance to win this game at all. Win for Stanford.
Yep, they start the season at home on a good way. 1-0 to start the season, heading into a huge matchup in week 2.
Yes, week 2 at home against Southern Cal, which could be the game day game of the week. I think it has a great possibility of being it. I have Stanford pulling off a win and starting 2-0.
I do as well. I think Stanford shocked the Trojans there. A very good game, I think, will happen. A very good chance, like you said, to have a game day over there in Stanford. And do see the Cardinal pulling out the W here, going to 2-0.
All right. So then they get another home game at Cal Davis. Again, it's an easy win. I think something really needed for Stanford after playing Southern Cal. A week where they can just, play easy, play the second, third stringers, and before they go up to Eugene to play Oregon.
Yeah, they definitely. That's a good favorable matchup in their schedule to have a very tough opponent in UNC in week 2, and then have to face Cal Davis in week 3. Gives them a little bit of a need of rest, even though we all know, of course, any given Saturday, anything can happen. I don't think this will be a Saturday that provides an upset for Stanford. It's an easy win, and get out. Make sure we get as less injuries as possible. Be ready for that matchup in week 4 at Oregon.
All right, and as already predicted, I gave Stanford the win, making them undefeated, still 4-0.
This is where I do have the first loss coming to form in Oregon and Eugene, and they will fall to 3-1 on my season for them.
All right, so then they go all the way out to South Bend, Illinois, Indiana, whatever state this is.
Indiana.
Yeah. which and Notre Dame, which is the home of this next NHL season Winter Classic. Why they chose Notre Dame field, I have no idea. But if you are a fan of the Blackhawks or the Bruins, spend $1,000 to get nosebleed seats and enjoy some hockey. But anyway, at Notre Dame, I think depending on Notre Dame, which just a quick side note, are we including Notre Dame in the ACC when we do these predictions?
We can. Up to you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Because they play 5 of the ACC teams, so might as well count them. I gave Notre Dame the win here. Stanford's first loss to me will be to Notre Dame.
Tough 2 weeks there back-to-back on the road against Oregon and again on the road against Notre Dame. Tough 2 weeks there, back-to-back losses for me. Puts their record at 3-2.
All right, so they go back home. They play Utah. Easy win, I think. But again, like you said, any given Saturday, it can happen. But let's see it happening. Another win. Another win for Stanford moves them to 5-1.
I don't think this will be as easy of a win for sure, but I do think they do rebound, play with a good fire heading into the bye week, given all they got to feed off that home crowd in Stanford and take the W, putting their 3-2 record heading into their bye week.
All right, so they do go into a bye week. The week after their bye, they go on the road to Arizona State. So they have a bye to prepare more for this, rest for it. I think it's a good win for Stanford, moving them to 6-1.
Do you think they come out of the bye week with a W against Arizona State? A little bit of rest there helps that for sure. That pushed them to 5-2 on my season for them.
All right, so they go back home, play Washington State. I'm giving them another win, 7-1.
They do take 3 in a row in my season for them as well, at home against Washington State, and they go to 6-2.
All right, November 3rd, circle this matchup because this is also another game of the week candidate. Stanford on the road at Washington. Can go either way. It really can. I'm giving Stanford the win, though Washington can definitely win this game, but I'm going Stanford to make them 7-1.
Very close game, very tight game, but Washington too good, too quickly, too good, too fast, too strong, and that home crowd is going to feed off that energy for them. And this is where Stanford will take a 3rd loss on the season, putting their record to 6-3.
All right. So now they go back home, Oregon State. Bloodbath victory here. I feel like this is the show where we make fun of Oregon State.
Fortunately, that is the truth. Oregon State is going to get punched around here a little bit, unfortunately. But like I said, you Beaver fans, you've got your College World Series championship. That's why I'm kind of representing Coastal Carolina here a little bit. Coastal Carolina, not the greatest in football ever since we moved up in the FBS, but did win a College World Series 2 years ago. So there's always a silver lining somewhere. So Oregon State suffers a good defeat here by Stanford, putting Stanford's record to 7-3.
All right. So then we go into November 17th at California. Another win here. That puts them for me at 6 in a row, moving them to 10-1.
This is where I said in previously when we covered Cal that there could be a couple of shock games, a couple of surprise games that could go either way. Sometimes, I try to put in a little bit of what could be a upset for sure, looking into my seasons here. And I do think California could be one of those teams that will give Stanford that scare, and they do finish off the scare, and California does win at home against Stanford, putting Stanford's record in my prediction to 7-4.
All right, to the end of the season, on the road at UCLA, big rivalry, another win, 7 in a row, 11-1 for Stanford.
Got them on a W here at UCLA, going 8-4, bowl eligible, of course, finishing 3rd in the Pac-12 North for me.
All right. So I got them 11-1. Definitely a record if that happens that can put them in the college football playoff, as we see, depending on how the other conferences go. But Does I guess I'll pose this question: if they do go 11-1, is the strength of conference a worry for you of them getting that fourth and final spot if need be?
With Oregon, USC, and Washington, that's their best teams in this conference that they face. Notre Dame is a very good out of conference scheduled matchup there that could help them definitely in the committee as long as Notre Dame has a good season. In your record in your season, I believe they do beat Oregon. They beat Washington, you said?
Yep.
And did they beat USC?
Yes.
They lose to Notre Dame.
Yes.
I think that's good enough for them to get in the playoffs. But, of course, they got to win their conference championship game, which we'll predict here in a minute or a little bit longer than a minute. But based on that alone, that would definitely put them in a conversation as that fourth, fifth, or sixth seed that is going to be watched very closely heading into Selection Sunday.
Yeah, and for me, the way I always see it is the ACC and the SEC champions automatically get in. The Big Ten more than likely will get in, and so it always, to me, would go down to the Big 12 and the Pac-12. And depending on who the Big 12 guy is, which may be Oklahoma, I haven't really looked at them all that much. I think 11-1 gets them in. But and then also to me determines on how Notre Dame does. If Notre Dame completely flops and that loss to Notre Dame then completely hurts Stanford. So,
I still don't think that'd be that. I mean, Clemson lost to Syracuse last year and won in as the number one seed. So, right. I think you can afford a bad loss in this playoff format. It's how you finish the rest of the schedule, how good you win, who of course, your strength of schedule the rest of that season. The only problem I would see with that is if they lost at Notre Dame, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That still gives them 7 games.
Yep.
Which is a good thing. Right. They still have 7 weeks to have some good wins. Utah is a good team in the Pac-12. Washington is definitely.
Yeah, but and luckily for them, that like you said, seven games after Utah's a middle of the road team, a tough team to always beat. You got to go on the road to Washington. That's going to be again on the road UCLA and California. Wins there definitely help out Stanford. So I mean they're definitely going to be in the conversation.
To me, I don't think so. Just based on my record is 8-4, I don't think they'll get to that level of conversations. But in your case with your season, I think with that record they would have to be.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, so another team in the conversation we'll cover next, Washington. General comments about them.
So Washington, and this is going to be based off my predictions. Washington returns 16 starters. 16 starters, including senior quarterback Jake Browning, running back Myles Gaskin. 2 of the probably the best players in the Pac-12 for sure. O-line is very good, very experienced, so that's always going to help having that experienced O-line, protecting your quarterback and obviously producing good blocks and setting up that run game very well. However, defense will be its strongest suit here for this team. They allowed 16.1 points a game last year. Very, very respectable. They look very good on paper. They look very good on paper with all that experience coming in. However, excuse me, and this will be kind of for my prediction for Clemson. As experienced as those teams are, 2 losses may equal no playoffs for them. And that's going to be the problem is that pressure of you have a good team. You have a very good team on paper. You guys look good. You guys have a pretty decent schedule set up for you. 2 losses you can afford. It depends. You can afford at least a conference loss, maybe. I don't know if you can afford an out-of-conference loss. That's going to hurt your strength of schedule, and the committee's going to look at that and they go, all right, they got 2 losses. Who are they against? Both of them, if they're in conference, I don't think gets them into playoffs. one out of conference or one conference game can still put them in a conversation. I just think that would be weighed heavily on that committee. So nerves probably going into the season of trying to exceed expectations for Washington. But on paper, to me, they are the favorite of the Pac-12 for sure.
All right, so we go in their first game on the road to Death Valley against Auburn. You were talking about they can't afford an out-of-conference loss, and I gave them one. I think Auburn defends their turf very well. So how do you see this game?
I think it's going to be a very good game for sure. SEC versus Pac-12. We did see this a couple of years ago with Washington and Alabama being in the playoff game. That did not go very well in Washington's favor. However, and I'll get into this in the predictions here when we're talking about conference championship games. As much as I just preached that and I hyped that up, I do give Washington a loss here at Auburn. Like I said, a very good game for both sides. I think it actually will be a defensive game. I really do. I think Auburn's defense and Washington's defense are going to come out slugging, and it just depends on either who creates more turnovers or who just simply moves the ball downfield a little bit more and gets a few more points on the board, which is ultimately what it's about. So I do give Auburn the W there, putting Washington, a very good team, 0-1 to start the season.
All right, so then they go home. They play North Dakota.
Thank God it's not North Dakota State.
Yeah, because, I don't know when they're ever going to move FBS, but who knows. But North Dakota itself, easy win in my opinion. 1-1 for Washington.
Yep, do think this is going to be a win for Washington, a very big win too. I think they will avenge the loss at Auburn very well and defend their turf and take home the W, pushing the record to 1-1.
All right, so now we go on the road again to Utah to play the Utes, and I say the Huskies get the win.
Going to be a difficult environment for sure, especially with maybe some doubt into their minds. We just lost at Auburn. Can we handle the road pressure? At the same time, it may fuel the fire and get them going and make them peeved off a little bit and make them have a really good game. And I do have them coming out on top at Utah, pushing the record to 2-1.
All right, so back home to play Arizona State, I gave another win to Washington, 3-1.
Yep, got another one for them. Arizona State is one of those teams that it's in a bleh type period for them. I do give the W to Washington, putting them to 3-1 in the season.
All right, so staying at home, play Brigham Young. Again, can Brigham Young play a factor in this conference? It absolutely can. A win here in this game would be big. That would give Washington 2 early losses, both out of conference. Again, as you said, it would weigh heavily on the committee's mind. However, I think Washington gets the job done, protects the turf, and gets the W, moving them to 4-1.
Yeah, I don't really see this as much of a very, very close game. I do think Washington takes control of this game pretty early, sets the line of scrimmage pretty well. The run game, I think, will shine in this one and takes home the W there, putting their record to 4-1.
All right, so they go back on the road out to Los Angeles, plays UCLA. I'm giving another win, 5-1.
People are going to probably watch this, and some of these predictions are going to look at us and say, really, you think that's going to happen? Or are you stupid? I'm willing to accept those criticisms. There's always going to be one of those teams that that's a thorn in your side for a season. For us, of course, last year was for Clemson, Syracuse. The year before that was Pittsburgh. However, I think this is going to be one of those trap games, and UCLA will defeat Washington and gives them their first conference loss and puts their record to 4-2.
All right, so back on the road out to Oregon, giving another win, moving them to 6-1.
I do have them going to Eugene. As odd as it is, they have them losing to UCLA, but I have them beating Oregon in Oregon. Bounce back from that week. I think that offense and that experience prevails. Gives Washington a W, putting them 2-5-2.
All right, back at home against Colorado. Another win, 7-1.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would be 6-2 for me. They do get the win against Colorado at home.
All right, on the road out to Berkeley. Another win to me moves them to 8 wins in a row, out to 8-1.
7-2 at California in Berkeley. Get a big W there.
All right. And so the next week they're out to Stanford. And at this point in my season, this to me has to be the game day game of the week because both teams, Stanford and Washington, will be 8-1 at this point in my predictions. Winner of this ultimately takes the Pac-12 North, into which I gave Stanford the win, moving this team to 8-2.
Let's see. So at this point, I have 7-2 for Washington, 6-2 for Stanford. I still think it's going to be a very good game. Game day, game of the week at this point. That could be definitely for sure thing for this. As we said for Stanford, though, I did give Washington the W. I do think that happens here. Put them to 8-2 on the record.
All right, so the week after Stanford's a bye week. Gives them time to rest up and prepare for the toughest game on their schedule, Oregon State. A win? 9 or 10-1. Excuse me, 10-1.
If they're playing their third stringers, yes, this could be a very tough game. But I do think it's weird how that bye week comes so late, and that could really affect this team. Is fatigue. Injuries could definitely play a pivotal point in the season as well. But I do think that no matter what, even if it's the third stringers out there, Washington comes out on top, moves to 9-2 on my season form.
And I just want to back up, and I said 10-1. I meant 9-2 to a record. I can't count. Anyway, they go on the road to end the season at Washington State. I think they grab the dub, finish the season 10-2, second in the Pac-12 North, which when you play in a conference and you win 10 games, most of the time you're expected to win the conference, or at least your division. But Stanford being 11-1, Washington being 10-2, Stanford will pull out on that division.
I have Washington State suffering a defeat to Washington in a rivalry game, putting them 6 wins in a row on my season, going 10-2, bowl eligible, of course, and they will win and represent the North Division, the Pac-12 championship. The Washington Huskies with a 10-2 record, in my prediction, will win the Pac-12 North Division.
All right. So now we move on to Washington State. Lost their starting quarterback in Luke Falk. The schedule, I mean, you look at it, the first 3 weeks are pretty easy. They get a little tough in the middle of the season. But overall, how do you feel about Washington State?
It's a rebuild year for them. Like you said, the quarterback is gone, and no quarterback on that team has taken a snap in a Washington State uniform. I do believe they got a transfer quarterback from Eastern Carolina coming over there, which is a very good offense that he came from. But you never know what it's like when you go from east to west in a different system, different conference, different opponents, different landscape and atmosphere. Also, they did lose 2 starters on that offensive line and 2 on the receiving core. So some inexperience up front, some inexperience on the outside there. So it's definitely going to be a rebuild year for them, kind of a down year. I do think they have some high points in which I will mention here in the prediction. But yeah, that's what I got for the Cougars of Washington State.
All right. So we move on. They go on the road to start the season at Wyoming, which is an awkward pairing. I guess when they planned this, they scheduled this game. They weren't all that prominent in the past. I think they were actually in another conference, I think. But at Wyoming on the road, I give Washington State the win.
Open up the season with the W at Wyoming. I agree.
All right, so they go back home. They play San Jose State. I give them another win to start out 2-0.
Yep, 2-0 to start the season as well. Very good start for the Cougars for sure.
All right, so you were talking about those times when the viewers would be like, "Are you absolutely serious? You want to say this?" Eastern Washington's week 3. I'm gonna give them an L. Eastern Washington has their FBS team, but they get a lot of transfers from FBS programs. They're one of the top FCS schools, and I definitely see an upset coming up here.
That's a very good one, and I was debating a lot on this one. When I saw that matchup, I was like, that's a tough one. And it was close. I was really looking at possibly giving Eastern Washington the win there. It would not surprise me if that did happen. But I did give the Cougars of Washington State a victory here. Put them 3-0, although I do think it will be a close game, a very scary game for Washington State, and it will lead to what will happen in the next couple weeks.
All right, so now we go to on the road, Southern California. You go into Pasadena. You just lost Eastern Washington. I think you lose again here. Move you to 2-2.
So, even though they won against Eastern Washington, in my prediction, I think that scared in them that close win, that very even if it's a tough opponent, yeah, there's still that I think maybe that prominence that sure any given Saturday, but at the same time, I'm sure no FBS team wants to lose to an FCS team, and that shakes that confidence. Even though if they do win in my season, that shakes their confidence, and an experience will catch up to them. They take L's and back-to-back weeks, but first starting at USC in Berkeley, they do lose there. Or Pasadena, not Berkeley.
They go back home, play Utah. I'm giving them another L, moving them to 2-3.
Back-to-back weeks with an L here. That confidence shaken from the Eastern Washington victory. Proceeds with follows up with an L at Pasadena, follows up with another L at home at Utah, and they fall to 3-2 on my season.
All right, so then they move on at home, or not at home, on the road at Oregon State. So they pull off a must-needed win here, moving them back to 500 at 3-3.
Yeah, I think they go into the bye week the next week with a good confidence-boosting win, and moves them to 4-2 in my season.
Like you said, there is a bye week. Then they're at home, which is always awesome to be at home for a bye week. And then the next week after that, your next game will be at home. It's always good to be at home and not have to travel, spend some of that bye week on the road. So they're at home, or playing Oregon, another win, 4-3.
While it's always good to have a bye week and be at home, I do agree with that. Oregon, in my opinion, in this conference, is just too good. And even if they didn't get a confidence win against Oregon State, I do think they follow up after the bye week with a loss, putting them to 4-3.
All right. So, they build confidence. You beat Oregon State, you beat Oregon, but you got to meet Stanford at home, or on the road, in Stanford. Back to 4-4 at 500.
Do fall to 4-4 on the road to Stanford. Do take an L there. 4-4 for the Cougars after 8 games.
All right, so then you go back home, play the Bears of Berkeley. I think they get the W here, moving to 5-4.
Yeah, I'm glad you had the win there, because I was going to say these next 3 weeks here are just going to be very flippy-floppy and weirdness for me. I do think they do go to Berkeley, or actually they're at home against California, and they do take a W here, putting them to 5-4.
All righty, November 10th, they're on the road at Colorado. I think another win here, good win, moving them to I think it's 9-4, not 9-4. I can't count.
6-4.
6-4. There we go.
I have them losing to Colorado. Just the weirdness that I see in these schedules that you never know what could happen. Pac-12 is just that conference that it's just any given Saturday is a fight here, and they do take an L to Colorado, putting them to 6-5 on the, or excuse me, 5-5 on the season.
All right, so they back at home. Excuse me while I get my camera adjusted. Back at home, Arizona, another win, 7-4.
I think Arizona's going to be a good team this year in the Pac-12, but once again, the craziness that I see it's a W for Washington State, putting them to 6-5.
All right, and as already predicted in the rivalry game again at home against Washington, I see them taking the L, finishing the season at 7-5.
Due for them taking an L here to Washington in the rivalry game, putting them to 6-6. However, that does give them bowl eligibility. So not an overall bad year for a rebuilding team for Washington State.
Of course, and now we move on to the South Division. So before we move on, you had Washington winning the North?
I did have Washington representing the Pac-12 North in the Pac-12 championship game at a 10-2 record.
All right, and I had Stanford at 11-1.
Okay. Very nice.
All right, so now we go into the North. We get Arizona. Any comments?
We're starting with Arizona. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Whenever you, I was trying to get a quick transition here and update some of these things.
Yes, sir. We're starting at Arizona.
So, Arizona, based on their record, not on the record, their schedule, they could have the easiest path to a division win should they be good enough. Kevin Sumlin era begins in Arizona, does transition as the Wildcats head coach here. Offense should be very good with quarterback Khalil Tate leading that charge. On defense, this is maybe where their strong suit could be. They do return 9 starters on that defense, which is very good. So I do think that will show in my record for them that they don't have a very bad season. So that's what I got on Arizona.
All right, so they start August 31st. On the road, that's the wrong team. That's Colorado. Why am I so far down? Let's scroll back up. They start at home against BYU and a loss to BYU. Start 0-1.
I see that BYU has a lot of Pac-12 teams they face, but I have them losing, I think, just about every Pac-12 team they face so far, and this is another one. Arizona does start off with the W at home against BYU.
All right, so now they go on the road. They play Houston, and they're going to start the season 0-2 with a loss to Houston as well.
I think Arizona surprises people in the first couple weeks here. I think they do take home a W here at Arizona. Very tough road game, very tough out-of-conference game, back-to-back out-of-conference games. Well, actually, we'll start with 3 straight, but 2 tough ones, and they do start the season 2-0.
All right, so they back at home. They're playing Southern Utah. It's good give them their first win of the season. Maybe moving them to 1-2.
I got them going 3-0 to open up the season at home against Southern Utah.
All right. And so we move on. They're back on the road to Oregon State with another win, moving them back to 500.
I got them going 4-0 to start the season. Don't worry. It'll catch up. But I do have them going 4-0 to start the season and maybe surprising a few people with that record.
All right. So, they're back to 500, maybe build some confidence. Well, they're back at home as well. USC, Southern Cal, they're going to lose back to under 400 to 2-3.
Under 400 or 500?
You know what? I'm going to need you to be quiet here.
I do have them losing to USC, going 4-1, losing at home to USC. And this is where my reasoning of being 4-0 starts coming into effect.
All right, so then they stay at home, play Berkeley with another loss, 2-4.
Have them losing here, making them 4-2 against California at home, back-to-back home losses.
All right, so they go on the road. They play at Utah. I give them another L, 2-5.
This is another L for me. 3 straight losses for them, putting them to 4-3 on the season.
All right, so then they stay on the road at UCLA. Again, another loss, 2-6, I think is what they are.
I have them rebounding with a W here, making them 5-3 on the season.
All right, so then they go back home, play Oregon. I give them a loss, 2-7.
I think this is going to be a very intriguing matchup between Oregon and Arizona State. Let's see if that Arizona's defense can muster up and do very well against Oregon. I do already have that prediction for, again, whenever we did Oregon. I do have Arizona taking the W here, making them 6-3 on the season.
All right, so then they go staying at home, Colorado. I'm giving them the win, 3-7.
I have Colorado as a win for Arizona, putting them to 7-3 on the season.
All right, so then they go back on the road to Washington State. They lose 3-8.
I do have them a loss at Washington State, putting the record to 7-4.
All right, and then back at home, Arizona State rivalry game. They lose again, finishing the year 3-9.
We are very opposite on that one. I do think they do get a win against Arizona State in the rivalry game, and they go on to finish 8-4.
All right. So now we move on to Arizona State and the opening comments about them.
This is going to be an interesting season for Arizona State. They get Herm Edwards as Herm Edwards begins his era as Arizona State head coach. He hasn't coached in a capacity since he was released in the NFL from the Chiefs in 2008, and he has not coached in college since 1989. So let's see if Herm Edwards can be up to date with everything in offensive and defensive categories there as head coach. Arizona State only returns 11 starters. And that's not on offense or defense. That's overall. It's a team. So a very inexperienced group of players. This transitions right into quarterback Manny Wilkins, receiver, and Keel Hardy. They return. So hopefully that running back, quarterback returns can help that offense a little bit. Defense allowed 32.8 points a game last year, and could not stop the pass. So let's see what Arizona State can offer, and see Herm Edwards' era begins in Arizona State.
All right, so they start at home, UTSA, San Antonio, a win.
To start the season 1-0 with a nice home win against the University of Tejas at San Antonio.
All right, so they stay at home. They play Michigan State, a Big Ten team here, Michigan State, which I think are going to come in. And Michigan State's going to win, move Arizona State to 1-1.
I do agree with that. I do think Michigan State will provide them with a loss, putting them to 1-1.
All right, so they go on the road to San Diego State, beat the Aztecs 2-1.
I do see a win here for Arizona State as well, putting them to 2-1 as well on the road.
All right, so then they go on the road to Washington. They lose 2-2.
Pretty respectable loss there. You got 2 road games back-to-back at San Diego State and to Washington. Pretty good travel distance for that. And do take an L, 500 to start the season at 2-2.
Then they go back home, play Oregon State. They get the win, 3-2.
3-2 is what they have them at as well. A win at home against Oregon State.
Back on the road to Colorado. I'm giving them another win, 4-2.
Pretty surprised we've stuck pretty well to the scheme here. 4-2 as well with the win at Colorado before heading into the bye week.
All right, so they do get a bye week, and coming out they are at home, but it's against Stanford. I'm giving them the loss, 4-3.
Coming out of the bye, I think they're going to be very confident heading into the bye with a 4-2 or 5-2 record. They're going to come out of the bye with a treacherous schedule, and they first start at home against Stanford. They do take an L here, putting them to 5-3. Or excuse me,
4-3.
4-3. My bad, 4-3.
All right, and then they go on the road to Southern California in the Pasadena. They lose again, 4-4.
Made another L for me as well, 4-4. I want to know what the deepest we have of any team in the Pac-12 right now. If we've matched the record, and I think this is the deepest one right now, 4-4.
I know we matched Washington, but I don't think we were.
Yeah, I think the losses were different on that one. Yeah.
I don't think we were game for game. So that, we go back at home. Utah, I'm giving them another loss, which I lost track of count. I think that put them at
4-5.
4-5.
The reason why I really know that is because we still stay on the same track here, having them a loss against Utah as well, 4-5, 3 straight out of the bye week.
And then I'm going to continue the loss cycle here with UCLA, 4-6.
And this is where we break up the fandom. This is where it ends. I give them a much-needed win at home against UCLA. They break the curse there of 3 in a row. Get a nice win against UCLA, moving them to 5-4 or 5-5. 5-5.
All right. So at Oregon, I give them the win, 5-6.
I have them as a loss at 5-6 as well, but loss at Oregon.
And as I already mentioned, I give Arizona State the win in the rivalry. They finished 6-6, bowl eligible.
Weird how we got to the 8th game of the season before, or actually the 10th game of the season before we fell off the tracks there. But I do have them as an L for the rivalry game at Arizona, putting their record to 5-7. Unfortunately, making them in the first year of the Herm Edwards era unbowl eligible.
All right, so now we go to Colorado. Not much to really talk about for me. What do you got for me?
Give me a second. So, wait, what are we going to?
Colorado.
I thought that's what you said. And I was like, wait, I don't see him on here. Colorado lost their 3 best wide receivers and their best running back in Philip Lindsay. So offensively, they're going to struggle. Can the O-line be good enough to protect a pretty decent quarterback in Steven Montez? We'll find out. The defense needs to be better to get to be a bowl contender. They allowed 208 yards a game on the ground last year. 208 yards a game on the ground. Not good. So they got to stop that run. They just got to be better overall on defense to even consider being bowl eligible.
Of course, so you get to go through the schedule. At Colorado State, I'm giving them the win, 1-0.
I do give them a win at Colorado State, getting the Buffaloes on the board as 1-0.
All right, so then they go on the road to Nebraska. I'm giving them their first loss, 1-1.
So far, so good. We're 2 for 2. Give them a loss at Nebraska. That's a tough game. Nebraska is just too good for them, 1-1.
Go back home, play FCS school, New Hampshire, the Wildcats. I give them a win, 2-1.
New Hampshire. Give them a loss for New Hampshire. A win for Colorado, 2-1 on the season.
That one, all right. So then they go bye week?
Yes. Yep. Yes. Early bye week.
So early bye week, which is good in terms of they will be fresh coming in to play UCLA, but is also bad because the rest of the schedule is pretty deep. I give them a loss though at UCLA, moving them to 2-2.
We end our trend very early. I do have them at home as a win against UCLA, a pretty good win. This Colorado team could be a little bit stingy against some of these guys. I do give them the win, putting them to 3-1 on the season at home against UCLA.
All right, so at Arizona State, I'm giving them a loss, moving them to 2-3.
Give them a loss on that one as well, putting them to 3-2 on the season.
All right, so then the next game on the schedule here is at USC, a loss, 2-5, 2-4.
Give that another loss for them as well. This pushes them to 500, 3-3.
All right, so back-to-back road games as they go to Washington, another loss, 2-5.
This is where they go under 500 for the first time this season. At Washington, a loss, making them 3-4.
Then to Oregon State, or back home to play Oregon State, a win, 3-5.
How sad to be an Oregon State fan. I'm sorry, guys. We do give them a win for Colorado, putting them to 4-4.
Go to Arizona. I say they lose, 3-6.
Do you see that as a loss for Colorado, putting them to 5-5 or 4-5? Excuse me.
Then to Washington, or back home against Washington. No, wait. To Arizona, excuse me. Loss to Arizona. How do you see that one?
We just said that one. Yes, they lose to Arizona. 4-5 for them.
All right, I'm gonna need you. I'm losing my brain here. I'm sorry. It's late. I've been up since 6 in the morning. Washington State. They also lose. Excuse me for getting completely backwards.
I do see this as a victory for Colorado, and it pushes their record to 5-5.
That makes so many mistakes. We were not sending this to Fox Sports. No. They go back home, play Utah. They lose, which pushes them to 3-8.
Do you see that as a loss for them, putting them to 5-6 on the season?
And they end the season at California. They win 4-8 to finish the year.
See, that's another loss. 2 losses back-to-back in a row, making them 5-7. Unfortunately, do not get to be bowl eligible for them.
All right, so Southern Cal. I think they're the favorites to win the Southern Division. Not any other. I mean, I guess UCLA might surprise. We'll get to them in a little bit, but other than that, that's what do you got for me about them?
So this is going to be a very tight. I think this could be just as tight as the North, if not tighter. I think there's 3 teams that could. Well, in this one, I think there's really just 2 teams favorites here in the North, or excuse me, the South. Arizona can make a good run for that, but I do think that it's really going to come down to a 2-team race for the South Division title. For USC, they have got severe questions at quarterback. They have a great roster, but who are you starting at quarterback? JT Daniels, Matt Fink, Jack Sears. I mean, there's 3 good quarterbacks, and that's a good problem to have, but it's very uncertain to go into fall not knowing who your quarterback is and having a lot of uncertainty and doubt for the other 2 guys that wouldn't be starting. They may have to rely on its rushing game, at least for the first couple of weeks, to get its quarterback situation resolved, which could be a bad and good thing. Running back Stephen Carr, he definitely could have a breakout year. Could be one of those USC running backs that proved very well. So if the running game has to be relied on, Stephen Carr, I believe, can come up to the task and lead that team. Defense should be good. It's returning 6 starters on defense, so for at least for the first couple of weeks to get whoever will be quarterback situated and resolved as quickly as possible. Defense should rely on a pretty good defense. They should, and then if that running game has to rely to carry the offense, I think it can for the first few weeks for sure.
All right, so let's get into the schedule. They stay at home week 1, play University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and get the win.
I do agree with that. They start the season 1-0, get everybody the ball movement, maybe get a couple of those quarterbacks in there, get some reps, get some practice in there, and try to get as familiar with that offense as possible because Next couple of weeks are tough.
That they are. Early matchup against Stanford on the road at Stanford. They take the L. Circle this one on the calendar because we may see it again in the conference championship game. How do you see this one?
I do see this as a early matchup that is pivotal in the Pac-12. I do give USC a loss here at Stanford, putting their record to 1-1.
All right, so this game, week 3, at Texas, pivotal for both teams. We'll talk about Texas when we cover the Big 12. Texas has a lot of questions to answer as well because it's Texas, and we don't know what Texas team we're going to get. However, I give Texas the win, moving USC's record to 1-2.
I agree with that. I think Texas is the it's the Tennessee of the Big 12. Very uncertain you never know what's going to happen with that team. But I do give USC the win here, moving them to 2-1 on the season.
All right, so now we go home. They play Washington State. I'm giving them the dub, 2-2.
Make that a win for them as well, putting them to 3-1 on the season.
All right, so on the road, Arizona, another W.
Make that another W as well for me, 4-1 to start the season as I head into the bye week.
That's right. They go bye week. After that, October 13th, they're at home against Colorado. Again, bye week, then back at home. Great combination to have, especially against a team like Colorado. They get another W, moving them to 4-2.
Moving them to 5-1 with a nice win at home after the bye, getting them prepped up for, in my season's predictions here for these teams, the most pivotal matchup of the Pac-12 South the week after Colorado. But I do have them as a win, 5-1 in the season for USC.
All right, that pivotal game is at Utah. I'm giving the Trojans the win to move them to 5-2.
This basically could settle the Pac-12 South as early as it is, with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games after that for USC and 5 games after that for Utah. Just a very pivotal matchup for sure. Like I said, it could determine the Pac-12 South Division Championship very early, but who knows with Utah's schedule what it could look like. But I do give the win to Utah at home against USC and have USC falling to 5-2.
All right, so then they go back home, Arizona State, another win, moving them to 6-2.
Got them beating Arizona State, moving them to 6-2 as well at home.
All right, then back on the road at Oregon State, another win, 7-2.
Staying along with the true theme for you as well. At Oregon State, a nice win for the USC Trojans, moving them to 7-2 as well.
Back home, playing Berkeley, another win, 8-2.
Make that 8-2 for me as well, and they do beat California at home.
All right, back on the road against UCLA, and let's hope I think it's gonna be the first time if we predict right that we'll predict a game with UCLA involved. The same, I give them a win, 9-2.
I give USC the victory at UCLA, making them 9-2 as well.
Like the first time you've ever predicted a game with UCLA involved. All right, so that gives, for me, 8 straight victories for USC, excuse me. And they play Notre Dame at home to end the season, and the win streak ends. Notre Dame with a big victory here, moving USC to 9-3.
I feel like if this game was in South Bend, I'd give the game to Notre Dame, but I have USC ending their season with a nice 5-game winning streak after the loss to Utah as a 10-2 record, with the win at home against Notre Dame, making them, of course, bowl eligible and a very big favorite for the Pac-12 South Championship game, putting them in the driver's seat to win the Pac-12 South Division.
All right, so we move on to UCLA. Lose Josh Rosen at quarterback. Any notes? Any notes for me? Good God, that hurt.
So our good old friend Chip Kelly comes back to college football and starts his reign as UCLA head coach. I think that's a good fit for them. They could get UCLA back to prominence, back to nationality prominence for sure. There is a lot of uncertainty at quarterback, with, of course, Josh Rosen not returning, moving on to the NFL. That's going to be a pivotal point for UCLA this season. It's going to be a rebuild season, I think, for sure. That defense was god-awful last season. He gave up 36.6 points a game, almost 37. Not very good, and it does not look like it could be better. Of course, for UCLA fans, they do hope it can be better, and they could at least win a few more games and get that Chip Kelly start off a good on a good note. But we shall see here in these predictions.
Let's see. They go at home, Cincinnati. They get the dub.
1-0 to start the season at home against Cincinnati. I agree.
All right, Chip Kelly's first test of the season on the road at Oklahoma. I give him a loss, 1-1.
Yeah, stay true to that theme as well. I don't think it's Chip Kelly fully under pressure. I just think it's the uncertainty at some of these positions and just how bad that team could be. That maybe the cracks are seen for sure. And Oklahoma takes a W, making the UCLA Bruins 1-1 after 2 games.
All right. So now we go. They play Fresno State at home. Excuse me, another win, 2-1.
Give that a 2-1 as well for the UCLA Bruins, beating the Fresno State Bulldogs at home, making them 2-1 in the season.
All right, so then go on the road, play Colorado, another win, 3-1.
That's where our win streak will end for them, and they, which is the win streak, that's 1 game. I do have them losing at Colorado, making their record 2-2.
All right, so then they go play Washington, which will be another loss, 3-2.
So this is how stupid this could be. When you hear my final prediction for UCLA's record, you're not going to believe this one. But I have them beating Washington at home in a surprise game early in the season. That's another big test for Chip Kelly. I do think that maybe being at home helps that crowd, helps that team out, and it's a trap game for Washington. I think that's the only blemish on Washington's one of the blemishes on Washington's record. And they do beat the Huskies and move their record to 3-2.
All right, so at Cal, another win, 4-2.
Have them losing this one at California after the big win in Washington doesn't make sense. No, but it's okay. They moved to 3-3, 500 halfway through their schedule.
All right, so to Arizona, another win, 5-2.
Have them winning against Arizona as well, putting them to 4-3 on the season.
Then they go to Utah, or stay at home, play Utah, loss, 5-3.
Have them losing to Utah as well, 4-4 after 8 games for the Bruins.
All right, so Chip Kelly's seen in Eugene for the first time, this time on the opposite sideline. And he gets a win, 6-3.
I do have Chip Kelly having a very interesting ovation at Eugene when he does look at those bright yellow uniforms, probably, or maybe green, we'll see, against Oregon. But I do have UCLA losing to that one, making the record 4-5.
All right, so 6-3 is a great way to start, but the last 3 games are going to be tough. At Arizona State, a loss, 6-4.
Do have them losing against Arizona State on back-to-back road games, Oregon and Arizona State. Got a losing streak going on here, 3 in a row. They do lose to Arizona State, putting the record to 4-6.
All right, so then at home, USC, however, it's a loss, 6-5.
Continue that losing streak, 4 in a row, having them lose at home against USC, putting the Bruins of UCLA's record to 4-7.
And they end the season at home against Stanford, lost. Their final record will be 5-7 if I count right.
I have them also losing to Stanford, pushing that losing streak to 5 games, making them 4-8. That means 4-8, and one of those 4 wins are against Washington. Crazy? Yes.
All right, so now we get Utah.
My opinion, to save the best for last.
Yes, we did. Let's see what we. Well, maybe we'll look at my prediction here. We're just gonna go ahead into this. Weber State at home win.
Yep, I do have that as a win. I'll quickly get my notes off here really quick. They do have a tough schedule, but tough schedule equals great opportunities for this team. Tyler Huntley, a great quarterback. He could have a great breakout year for them as well. Biggest problem is experience on defense. They only have 4 starters returning, but they still have good expectations for that defense and overall as a team. And like we said for week 1, they do get a W against Weber State.
Righty. So then, go on the road at Northern Illinois with with another win, 2-0. Excuse me.
These are not your 2014 Northern Illinois Orange Bowl appearance team. I believe they went to the Orange Bowl that year, or 2013. Either way, they went to one of the Big Six bowls.
Yeah.
This is, however, not your father's, or maybe not your brother's, or Northern Illinois. I don't know. Anyways, it's a W for Utah, 2-0 to start the season.
Go back home, play Washington, and get their first loss, 2-1.
I agree with that. They do lose to Washington in a good game, I do believe, and they will put their record at 2-1.
Go on the road, play Washington State, lose again, 2-2.
Do have Utah winning this game, rebounding after that bye week on the road at Washington State, taking home the W, making the record at 3-1.
All right, so then they go at Stanford, lost again, 2-3.
Do believe they lose to Stanford on the road, pushing their record to 3-2. Remember this game if you are paying attention on YouTube. 3-2 after Stanford or the Utah Utes.
Go back home, play Arizona, win 3-3.
Agree with that. They do get a win against the Wildcats at home in Utah, pushing their record to 4-2.
All right, go play USC at home with a loss, 3-4.
Very big game for Utah in this situation. If they're going to have any chance in that Pac-12 South, they do get a big victory in a very pivotal game against USC, putting their record to 5-2.
All right, so then at UCLA with another win, putting them at 4-4.
Got another W at UCLA, making their record 6-2.
All right, at Arizona State, a loss, 4-5.
Got another W going there, 7-2 are the Utah Utes after the win at Arizona State.
All right, so they go back home, play Oregon with a win, 5-5.
I agree. This was also a very good game, I think, for Utah and Oregon, a very high-profile matchup. Maybe some big offensive sparks going on there, but I do see a W happening for Utah, making them 8-2.
All right, at Colorado with a win, 6-5.
Do see another win there for Utah, pushing that win streak further and further, making them 9-2 on the season with a win at Colorado.
And they play BYU at home to end the season. I'm going to give them a loss to end the season, 6-6.
Have them winning at home against BYU in that good, interesting game, ending their season on a 7-game winning streak and a 10-2 record, which matches the USC Trojans. And USC's 2 losses are against Stanford and Utah. Utah's are against Washington and Stanford. However, the tiebreaker would be the head-to-head matchup, and Utah would be beating USC, thus creating that opportunity and winning out the rest of their way after beating Arizona the week prior and then beating USC. They win the rest of the way in their schedule, 10-2, and will represent the Pac-12 South Division as winning the division and going on to face the Washington Huskies in the Pac-12 championship game.
You got Washington and Utah. I got Southern Cal and Stanford.
Classic.
All right, so who wins the Pac-12?
I have Washington against Utah in a very interesting Pac-12 championship game, and I have the Huskies of Washington defeating the Utah Utes, winning the Pac-12 championship game. However, I made this bold prediction under this. Washington wins the Pac-12 championship, but will not be one of the 4 teams in the college football playoff.
All right, so for me, I got Stanford USC. We got a 9-3 USC team and 11-1 Stanford team. I think Stanford continues hot. They finished the season with a win here in the Pac-12, 12-1, and I do think Stanford gets another representation finally again in the playoffs for the Pac-12.
Both Washington and Utah for me are 10-2 heading into this Pac-12 championship game. Washington winning, putting the record to 11-3, or excuse me, 11-2. Very respectable record. Probably would be one of those top 5, top 6 seeds. But I just think that that's just not going to be good enough to get into that Final Four at the end of the season.
Absolutely. And when they got y'all who watched on YouTube, and tune in next time as we're going to go over the Big 12 next. So from me and Cody, thanks for watching the OSN Network here. See y'all next time.